It's going live. First, obviously the fantasy reminder. There is a thing to set your fantasy lineup and to give me the update on that. Please make sure you're jumping on that in Google Classroom. There is an assessment due tomorrow that has been up there for about a week or so. An assessment for calculations for baseball. Please make sure that you are jumping on that. Being due tomorrow. I mean, obviously it's due tomorrow at 2:00, so we do have our Google Meet as well. Are you guys aware of what's happening Wednesday of next week? No. They're doing PSATs, SATs. They're doing, yeah. Obviously that shouldn't affect our Thursday class. But if you are doing that PSAT, SAT thing, you would be showing up on a day, you guys would be showing up on a day that you're not typically used to showing up on a Wednesday in order to do that. And then Wednesday classes won't happen as normal. I'm basically going to tell my Wednesday class, hey, you have to tune in for Thursday to get the full lesson. So you guys on Thursday will actually get the live lesson. They will get the virtual lesson. But everyone should be on the same page as long as they show up. But we'll get that thing done. Should be fun. Should be fun. I don't know. Then the virtual schedule is going to change very slightly. I don't really know. We all got an email yesterday. Teachers got an email in regards to possibly changing the schedule. Have you heard about this? Cool. They're surveying teachers. Now, I have no idea whether or not they're going to do this. I have no idea. But they're surveying teachers right now in regards to whether they're going to stick to the current schedule that we have or they're going to switch back to a 5-day in-person schedule. And they're going to order a ton of dividers for all the desks. That is very impractical. Very impractical. But they're hoping, if they're going to do this change, they're hoping to do it by mid-November, which is like, mid-November. Great idea. After the week you had off, where on that week off, people might be, going out of state. I don't know. Great idea. Drop my box. Ha! Got it. Got it. There it is. That's the first one this year. Oh, gosh. Congratulations. You're the first one this year that I did that to. It was like I was a legend last year. Every time I did it, people would stand up and just start clapping and high-fiving each other. We can't do that this year because of COVID, But people would like high-five each other. It was great. Anyway, back to this. So what I reminded people of, do you know about Wednesday? Wednesday next week, they're doing PSAT, SAT for people who sign up for whatever. So if you guys are not used to showing up on a Wednesday, but if you're signed up for that, you have to show up on a Wednesday. But Thursday classes should run as normal. Whew. Anyway, let's get this thing moving. I talked about fantasy. Get your fantasy thing updated. I talked about that baseball assessment. Get that baseball assessment done. The home run hitter project, the home run hitter thing, I'm delaying about a week because I have something special in mind for it. But we're going to get this thing going. Let's talk about batting averages. This is my goal for today. Let's talk about batting averages. What's a good, who leads the league in batting average typically today, year to year? Mayhew? What's he at? Let me check. We'll check. Season by season batting. You just want to go back to Ricky Henderson. Wait, what's up? Oh, whatever. All right, so, here we go. Batting champions. Yo, that's not fair. All right. Well, you guys are in charge of vetoing trades. But anyway, look at this. Here is the National League batting champions in the last bunch of years. They have the batting champion and they have the runner-up next to it. And you can see now American League. I know you said Mayhew, but I don't know about what the American League is. I'll look at that later. But you can see where the batting averages are. 351 average means that he gets a hit 35% of the time. 35% of the time that it's not a walk, not a hit by pitch, not a sacrifice fly, because those don't count as at bats. Okay? Very good question. You see this little footnote? Good. He's still talking about that trade. Oh, gosh. So if you go down to the footnote, where are you, footnote? There it is right there. They both list them at 329, but Yelich had 329.2, and he had 328.6. So that's why they gave him the batting title, you know. But again, that just means plate appearances. You get a hit 35% of the time, 32% of the time, 33% of the time. That's a typical good batting average today. No. There is a magic batting average out there that is kind of like the holy grail of batting averages, which is entirely doable. It's entirely doable. Getting a 400 batting average. Instead of getting a hit 35% of the time, you get a hit 40% of the time. It doesn't seem like much of a difference. Getting a 400 batting average. But I have a page to show you here. Let's see. List seasons with a 400 hitter. Yeah, because I looked it up earlier. Now check this out. They have the list of all players who had a 400 batting average in one season. Now, most of these players are in the 1800s. You can clearly see right there. And then we start getting into the 1910s. Now, some of these players are some of the greatest in history. Nap Lajoie, Ty Cobb, George Sisler. If you're in yellow, that means that you were inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Do you know the story? Yep, the 1919 Black Sox scandal, where the 8 players allegedly threw the World Series. Field of Dreams? Field of Dreams? I said Field of Dreams yesterday in class, and not a person knew what I was talking about. You all have to, that's part of your homework. Go watch Field of Dreams tonight. Yes, yeah. That was a bit more historical drama, whereas like Field of Dreams is a bit more science fiction-y, you know? I don't know. I like Field of Dreams. But getting a 400 average, like back in the day, back in the 1800s, it would happen almost every season. There were, oh, that's the career batting average. The career batting average was pretty good too, 34%, 33%, 34%. But you can see that some of these batting averages are astronomical. These are batting averages that unfortunately you don't see today. Very good question. Why not? We're going to partially try to answer that today and talk about if anybody has a chance. Hold on. But let me show you this. You see all of them in the 1910s. Then look at all those in the 1920s. Roger Hornsby, Harry Haleman, blah, 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 blah. Roger Hornsby, Bill Terry. And then at the bottom, you see like there's this name, Ted Williams, right? How many have happened after Ted Williams? None. There has not been a 400 batting average, eligible for a season, mind you. We'll talk about eligibility in a little bit. But there has not been a 400 batting average for a season since 1941. It's almost been 80 years. And for some reason, we can't get over that hump. People cannot break that 400 batting average. And it's because of the way baseball's played today. It's because of the way baseball's played today. It's really messed up. Now, Ted Williams was an unbelievably gifted ball player. Ted Williams lost 5 years of his career when he basically became a fighter pilot for the U.S. Army during World War II. He lost 5 years of his career during the prime of his career playing for the Boston Red Sox. I have a few videos to show you on Ted Williams, just to kind of give you a historical context as to how good he was. Right now, they're very short. They're like 2 minutes each. You'll see. So let's start with this one. Oh, 1 second. I muted stuff. There we go.
November 28, 1941, it may be a history-making day. Red Sox and A's in a doubleheader here at Shibe Park in Philadelphia. But all eyes are on this man, Ted Williams, gunning for a 400 season. He's hitting an even 400. I think if I were Ted...
Now, just as a side note, he said he's hitting an even 400. Going into the last day of the season, Ted Williams' batting average was actually 0.39965. Rounded up to 400. It wasn't exactly 400 or better, but it rounded up, and they were going to give it to him. But he decided to play on the last day of the season, despite the fact that the coach gave him the option to sit.
I would sit out today, but Ted never backed into anything. I got up to the plate, and I'm all set to hit. The pitcher was taking the sign, and all of a sudden, Bill McGowan, the umpire, stopped the game, and he turned his back towards the pitcher, and he started wiping the plate again. Right, it was perfectly clean, but he started wiping the plate again, and he said, in order to hit 400, he says, you got to be loose.
A lot of players, when they're told, you got to stay loose, all of a sudden you get all tight and you say, oh my God, I'm trying to hit 400. What am I doing here? But Ted Williams just laughed and he's like, you got it. That's right. That's what I got to do.
First time I got up, Bob Johnson was playing first base that day, and I hit a ball sharply by him. And of course, that was a great hit for me because, you know, it got me going a little bit.
You hit a single the first time at bat, a home run the second time at bat.
Long drive, deep right field. This ball is out of here.
2 singles after that. That's the first game.
And after you hit 400 in the first game, is it true that Joe said you could sit out the second game?
Yes, it is. And I felt pretty confident, and I thought, well, I might as well just go on out and play the second game, which I did, and I got a couple more hits that game.
The second game, a double that knocks out the public address horn in right field.
Williams, a line drive, blue darter. It hits the horn in right field, and Ted has himself a double. Ted finishes the doubleheader 6 for 8.
He goes 6 for 8 in the 2 games, and he winds up hitting 406.
6 for 8 over those 2 games.
Instead of batting 400, he winds up with 406.
So then check this out. Some historical figures talking about will we ever see
Over
another
a 19-year
will we ever see another 400 hitter?
career, Ted Williams compiled a tremendous case for earning the title the greatest hitter who ever lived. Even though he missed 5 seasons in his prime serving in the military, Williams earned 6 batting titles, 2 Triple Crowns, hit 521 home runs, and had a lifetime .344 batting average, and the highest on-base percentage in baseball history. Still, as the years passed, hitting .406 in 1941 would be recognized as his greatest feat, even by the man himself.
I regard it now 10 times more an accomplishment than I did at that particular time, because I thought, well, I'm going to hit 400 some more because I'm just getting started here.
It has now been 75 years since anyone last hit 400. And during those 75 years, the game has changed considerably.
I think it's a number that nobody even thinks about anymore, to be honest with you. I don't think anybody's out there thinking they're going to hit 400.
It'll never be done again. When you look at the hitters nowadays, Altuve is probably the closest, and he's around 345, 350. And when you think about another 50-point jump just to stay at 400.
Even the very best hitters today strike out a pretty fair percentage of the time. It works against the infield hits, the bloop hits, the balls in play that help you hit 400. And then you also have to walk a lot. And then you got to hit 400 in the official plate appearances that you get. It's a lot to ask.
Do you think we'll ever see anyone hit 400 again?
For my part, Peter, I don't think it can be done. I don't think someone's going to hit 400 again. I just think the state of relief pitching now with these guys throwing 98 miles an hour, you don't see any worn-out guys.
Well, all the analytics guys upstairs telling managers how to run their pitching staffs. You see one pitcher for 2 at-bats, and you don't see another pitcher for 2 at-bats again.
I think it's almost. I think it is impossible to hit 400 now.
So then one more before we kind of get started with this. I wanted to show you this. This was an amazing analyzing of Ted Williams' swing and just how incredibly gifted he was. Check this out.
When I look at Ted Williams, you think 406. I mean, absolutely amazing. In that doubleheader, he went 6 for 8. And when you look back at some of the conversations he had with Tony Gwynn, he loved to talk hitting. Ted Williams loved to talk hitting, which was awesome for our generation, before he had passed. And I want to look back at Ted Williams and look back at his mechanics and see, man, what did this guy do that relates to
to hitters today. This guy was beyond his years. He knew what he was doing. They didn't have the video back then. They didn't have all the stuff, the tools they have now. This guy was a student of the game. That book, the science of hitting, was so good. Now, the first thing he did was watch how he loads his hips. Watch this little kickback. Look at that little kickback with the front knee. He loads his backside on this kick. Watch. Here he goes. Boom. There's that load to that back hip. That's where he gets his power to drive off it. And when you watch him, this next angle right here, you can really see it. On the second part here, watch his back foot. He's going to drive. His foot's going to come off the ground for a split second. Boom. Right there, you can see right there. Now, look at the stiff front side. That front leg acts as a brake. When that goes down, Ted Williams gets all his weight off his backside right into the ball right here and into the barrel. That's why he hit with so much power, over 500 home runs. But here's the key, the separation here. Look at the drive from his bottom half where he gets that belt buckle turned all the way, but he keeps his hands back with what's called a bat lag. His bat lags back, and all the energy he created from that lower half is now in his barrel. And that's where he gets it. Look at this right here. Boom. And there's the eye-hand coordination. That's why he was an unbelievable fighter pilot. All those things. He had that eye-hand coordination. But he had such a great setup that when he stepped, all that energy had that little coil, little turn back like this. And when he came forward, he put the energy in his back hip, and he nothing was left on his backside when he came here. And then he had the separation. He didn't bring his hands with him like this. He got that belt buckle turned here, and then the bat was back here, and then he used that coordination and boom. And that's why we say it all the time. Maybe the greatest hitter ever played the game, 401. But he had the mechanics, and he knew what he was doing in that box. It was pretty special.
Ted Williams. Again, like he, in my opinion, this is just an opinion statement. In my opinion, has the second prettiest swing of all time. Just the second prettiest swing of all time. I think the prettiest swing of all time belongs to Ken Griffey Jr. I think a lot of people would agree with that sentiment just because it just looks so beautiful. But now here comes the big question. What does it take to hit 400? Ladies and gentlemen, if you would, I'm going to need those notebooks out and open. Let's see what we got here. Let's talk about, I'm going to title this 400 batting average. You know, in baseball, there have been a lot of holy grails. Hitting 61 home runs in a season, done. Breaking Hank Aaron's record of 755, done. Getting a triple crown. The last one had been Carl Yastrzemski in 1967, and then Miguel Cabrera did it just a few years ago. Done. Good question. A triple crown is leading the league in batting average, home runs, and RBIs all in the same season. And by official designation, that would be a triple crown. But it had not been done since 1967, up until a couple of years ago when Miguel Cabrera did it. But a 400 batting average seems to be the next holy grail that, like, I don't know whether or not anyone is even capable of doing it. Now, a few years ago, Jose Altuve was like the golden boy of baseball. Today, his name has been tarnished a little bit because of the cheating scandal with the Astros. But he possibly has the capability of doing it with the skills that he has. So let's go into him a little bit. Jose Altuve, let's just say he has 57 hits with a 380 batting average. The question then becomes, what does he have to do to get his average to 400? Now, there's a couple of things that go along with that. First of all, somebody yesterday said, well, Mr. Markey, how come somebody just doesn't, like, play the first game of the season, get, like, a bunch of hits, and then stop playing for the rest of the year? Like, if you just went up to bat and you went 2 for 2, What's your batting average if you're 2 for 2? 1,000. Why don't you just stop playing there? Well, according to Major League Baseball rules, to have a qualified batting average, it's a very technical rule where you have to have 3.1 plate appearances for every team game that your team basically played. So if a team plays 162 games, if they play 162 games, you have to have at a bare minimum over 500 plate appearances. 500 plate appearances is not just an at-bat. It could also be a walk, which a walk does not count as an at-bat. It could also be a hit by pitch. It could also be a sacrifice fly. All of those don't count as at-bats, but they do count as plate appearances. So you have to have a minimum number of plate appearances in order to have a qualifying average. Well, how many plate appearances? First question that I have for you in terms of this information, we have to figure out how many plate appearances did Jose Altuve have to get this kind of average? I'm sorry, not plate appearances, at-bats. Just to remind you of a couple of calculations. Batting average is calculated as hits divided by at-bats. That is how you calculate one's batting average. Let's set up this calculation, and then you're going to help me out with trying to solve this thing. We don't know how many at-bats he's had so far. He's had 57 hits. 57 divided by however many at-bats should give us that 380 batting average. How do I solve that? Not by 0.38, because eventually my goal, I got to get X by itself. Multiplying by 57 won't do it either. You could, but I'm going to do something else first. Something that makes it look a lot nicer. You could cross multiply. Technically, what that would look like, I would multiply both sides by X. If I multiply this side by X, watch what I'm going to do here. If I multiply this side by X, what happens to the X's? They cancel out. And over here, if I multiply it by X, I end up with 0.380X equals 57. Now, Louis, that would be the result of cross multiplication. You would get the exact same thing if you cross multiplied. Now what do I do? Yeah, and that I'm going to go to my calculator for. I'm going to go to my calculator for that. I'm going to divide by 380 on both sides. 57 divided by 0.380. 0.380. There you go. X equals 150 at-bats. He has a 380 batting average at the moment. I can get his average above 400. But the problem is I need to get a minimum number of at-bats for it to qualify for a 400 season. Like, for example, let's just say in the very next game, Altuve goes 5 for 5. He gets 5 hits and 5 at-bats. Let's just say he goes 5 for 5. If Altuve goes 5 for 5 in his next 5 at-bats, watch what's about to happen here, just to kind of give you an idea. I'm gonna hit enter in a minute. But if Altuve goes 5 for 5 in his next 5 at-bats, that means that he got 5 additional hits in 5 additional at-bats. If he goes 5 for 5, let's just see what his average is. Bam, 400. Happy day. But the thing is, he only has 155 at-bats. That is not enough, according to baseball rules, to qualify for a 400 season. It's not enough. It is not enough. So what do we do? What do we do? It's a what? Here's what we got to do. We got to take this a little bit deeper. Let's do some investigation. Let's look up Jose Altuve. Jose Altuve, MLB.com. Let's do that. There's the man. The Astros are still in it, right? Cool. Stupid Astros. Anyway.
Yeah, the A's was called.
The what? I'm all the way with the Dodgers this year. I said that earlier. I'm all the way with the Dodgers. Anyway, I got to scroll up just a tiny bit. There we go. So this is Jose Altuve's career stats. What I would like to focus on, well, obviously, number one, you can look at batting average. His batting average has been pretty good. I mean, there's a 341, 313, 338, 346, 316. But according to these legends, Altuve might be the only one who has a shot at this. Look at his at-bats. Now, this season, I don't think we can really count this season. I don't think we can count this season because he only played in 57 games. I was like, I don't know if that even counted as his rookie year or not. But, yeah, I can't count that in terms of a full season. Let's just count like full seasons, right? And I can't count 2020. I can't count 2020 because the team only played 60 games. Yeah. So let's look at these numbers right here. These are full seasons of at-bats for Altuve. I did the average. If you average those numbers together, he averages about 595 at-bats a season. He averages about 595 a season. I'm going to round that up to 600, just for the sake of simplicity. Let's say that he has 600 at-bats on average. So far, according to our notes, he's had 150. But we want to get his total up to 600 at-bats, and because that's what he averages. And if he averages 600 at-bats, then he will definitely qualify for a batting average. Let's see what happens here. Let me flip this back. Japan. And let me go here. So, a couple of pieces of information that you need to have. Zooming out, zooming out, zooming out. There we go. Let's say Altuve has 600 at-bats on average. Let's say that you can't see it. Let's say he has 600 at-bats on average. That would mean he starts with 57 hits. That's where we picked up with him. He has an unknown number of extra hits. And we are trying to get him to a batting average of 400. That magical number. He has 57 at-bats. We're getting him up to 600, or he has 57 hits. We're trying to get him up to 600 at-bats. We don't know how many additional hits he's going to need. How do I solve this? How do I get X by itself here? I can't subtract it yet. I got to get rid of the fraction first. Yeah. You could do that little cross multiplication again if you wanted to. You could also multiply both sides by 600. If you multiply both sides by 600, you end up with something like this. Now we can easily subtract. If you subtract, he needs 183 additional hits. He needs 183 additional hits. He needs to hit 183 out of 450 to average 400 for the season. Seems doable. He started the season with 57 hits. He needs 183 hits in order to finish the season, in order to hit his average of 600 at-bats, to get that 400 average, and to make history. There's a slight problem, though. There's a slight problem. According to this, how many total hits did Altuve need to get in 600 at-bats? He needs 240 hits. And why is that a big deal? Why is 240 hits such a big deal? I'll show you why it's such a big deal. Go back over here. Hit record, MLB. Let's go to season. Oh, I know what the record is, but that's not actually what I'm going to show you. Well, I am going to show you the record, but what I really want you to focus on is this. This is a list of the only men in history who have ever gotten 240 hits in a season. That's it. If Altuve is going to average 600 at-bats, he needs 240 hits. If you notice, look at this list. Do you see the name Ted Williams? Because I don't. I don't see, well, Barry Bonds never hit anywhere near 400. Oh, talking about hits in a season. Yeah, Barry Bonds never had anything near that. In fact, I could look that up real quick. I think Barry Bonds, MLB.com, Barry Bonds. In terms of his career, because getting 200 hits in a season is pretty good. Getting 200 hits in a season is considered pretty good. That's a pretty good season. Barry Bonds. How many games did he play? 162. Yeah, 162. The most hits that Barry Bonds ever got in one season looks like 181. Yeah. The best batting average that Barry Bonds ever had, it looks like, I see 336 up there. Oh, I see a 370. I do see a 370. That was his 2002 season. Pretty good. But again, these men are the only one who have 240 hits. Ichiro. You know what's really cool about Ichiro when he won Rookie of the Year? Dude won Rookie of the Year when he came into the league. But do you know what was so great about it? No? He also won the MVP. He was Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same season. How is that possible? Well, he played like a bunch of years in the Japanese league first. So he was already a seasoned pro before he came to Major League Baseball. But anyway, Ichiro is amazing. Back to this. So here's the problem. Here's the problem that we have. We want Altuve to bat 400. Let's see. For Altuve to get a 400 batting average, he would need 240 hits in 600 at-bats, which is not feasible. It's not feasible. It's possible, but it's not feasible. For the man to have 240 hits and 600 at-bats is incredible. But I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. So we need to come up with feasible results. He doesn't have to have 600 at-bats in a single season. He could, but he doesn't have to. A lot of those at-bats could be replaced with walks. Because if you get a walk, you get on base, but it does not count as an at-bat. Here's the equation that we need. Here's the equation that I need us to focus on for today. I'm going to explain exactly what this equation is, what it does, and what those letters represent. Altuve has 57 hits and 150 at-bats so far. What does he have to do from here on out in order to hit that 400 average? Well, X and Y are going to help that out. What do you think? What do you believe this Y represents? Trying to calculate batting average. Batting average is hits divided by at-bats. What does this Y represent? More specific, though. It does represent hits, but something a little more specific. Not necessarily extra base hits, because extra base hits would be like doubles, triples, homers. just additional hits. He's already hit 57. He's already gotten 57 hits. Y would be the additional hits on top of the 57. What would the X represent? Additional at-bats in the same fashion. I'm going to label that real quick. Because it's like at some point in the season, the dude has 57 hits. He has a 380 average. But for the rest of the season, Y is going to represent additional hits, and X is going to represent additional at-bats. Now, this is going to take a turn in a moment. I'm going to tell you exactly what turn is about to happen before we actually get there. The turn that is about to happen is that we are going to take this batting average calculation, that is trying to force a 400 average, and we are going to turn it into a linear equation. Now, when I say linear equation, I'm just talking Algebra 1 stuff. We're not doing anything crazier beyond Algebra 1 linear equations for now. But I need to turn this into a linear equation. Tell me, for a linear equation, what form does a linear equation typically have? What did you remember from Algebra 1? Y equals mx plus b. I got to get y by itself. Here. Watch what I'm about to do. This is going to be nuts. Watch what I'm about to do here. I'll explain exactly what I did in a moment. I'm going to explain exactly what I just did in a moment. Lewis, you've mentioning the whole cross multiplying thing. Technically, you could do cross multiplying here. Cross multiplying will work as long as you consider the fact that the 57 and the Y are in parentheses and the 150 and the X are in parentheses. If you were to cross multiply, it'd be like 57 plus Y times 1, and it would be 400 times this 150 plus X, which is what I have here. A different way of looking at it would be multiplying both sides of the equation by the denominator. If you multiply the right side by 150 plus X, they would cancel. If you multiply the left side by 150 plus X, you get that here. What do you think I'm going to do next? Yes, but what's that special word that you learned in middle school? Distribute. I'm going to distribute that 400. If you distribute that 400, mind you, it is a 0.400. You get 60 plus 0.400x equals 57 plus y. And then I'm just going to subtract the 57. If I subtract that 57, I end up with the following, and this is the equation that we need. This is the equation that we need. This equation, if you plugged in a value for x, would calculate something for y. We have labeled x to be additional at-bats. We have labeled y to be the additional hits. So basically, if you plug in a value for x, it should spit out a value of y in terms of the number of additional hits he needs. Let me show you something on the calculator here. Let's see. There we go. Let me zoom in. You guys have used this before in your algebra classes, I'm assuming. There it goes. How do I get to a table of values? Second graph. If you go second graph, it brings you to a table of values. Now again, this is based on this equation, 0.400x plus 3. And remember that X represents additional at-bats and Y represents additional hits. Say it one more time. Well, we're going to talk about this for a little bit. I'll talk about this actually right now-ish. I just blocked off these answers right here. First, I'm going to cross all them out. Here's the reason. First, we can't have a fraction of a hit, right? You can't have a fraction of a hit. Second, 0 at-bats, 3 hits. That doesn't make any sense. This was the first example that we did together, 5 and 5. He can go 5 for 5 in his next game. If he gets 5 hits in his next 5 at-bats, he will get that 400 average. He will. This decimal's not going to work. It won't, unfortunately. This decimal will not work. If you're going to qualify for a batting title, most experts agree that you need a minimum of 450 at-bats. Minimum. And then the remaining plate appearances will be made up with walks and hit by pitch and sacrifice flies. So if you get 450 plate at-bats, then they say, yeah, you probably will qualify for the batting title. Probably. Okay, so I got to get to 450. Hold on. Well, he's already had 150, right? Hasn't he already? He's already had 150 at-bats. These are additional at-bats. So I have to get to 300. 300 additional at-bats, and that should do it. Oh my gosh, this is taking forever. If only there was an easier way to do this. Do you know the easier way to do this? Because I do. Look at this. You guys see where it says window? What's it say above it in yellow? Second window brings me here. I can start the table anywhere I want, which means I could jump directly to 300 if I wanted to. 300 additional at-bats. There it is. That's one feasible answer right there. That is one feasible answer right there. At a minimum, he needs 123 hits in 300 extra additional at-bats in order to get that 400 average. You could also say, oh, maybe he goes 125 for 305. Don't do the decimals because you can't have a fraction. You can't have a fraction of a hit there. But you can go all the way up to what we talked about, which was an additional 450 at-bats, in which he has 183 hits. This table will have it all. So here's what I'm going to say in terms of a final answer. The question, what does Jose Altuve have to do in order to get a batting average of 400? Well, here are some feasible results. One feasible result at a minimum, he's got to go 123 for 300 to finish the season. And at a maximum, and this maximum may not be feasible, he's got to go 183 for 450. He's got to do that, somewhere in that range. At a minimum, he's got to go 123 for 300. At a maximum, he's got to go 183 for 450. As long as he is somewhere in between that, he should be able to get a 400 batting average. Should. Doesn't always happen. You mentioned Tony Gwynn last period. Tony Gwynn, one of the greatest players, doesn't look like a great player. Do you know what made him so good? Do you know? I know. So if you're going to be a Major League Baseball umpire, you have to go through what they call umpire school. Obviously, some are better than others. But what they do now in order to train you to be an umpire is they put you in this kind of like sensory room in which they have headphones on you and they're showing you footage and you have to make calls based on the footage. And the footage is acting in such a way where it's like flash, flash, flash. It's like flashing at you. And it's trying to get you accustomed to this idea of like flash bulb. Okay, boom, that's what the pitch was. Immediately make the call. And they're trying to get your ears and your eyes and your brain to all work together instantaneously without thinking. So that if a pitch comes in, you don't have to think, well, was that a ball or was that a strike? You just, boom, strike, and you can immediately make the call. Tony Gwynn somehow was able to go through that same training. He went through the same training that umpires do in order to become umpires. And that's how he was able to be such an amazing hitter. Because with the ball coming in, he was able to like make those connections and those quick calls and decisions. It was unbelievable the way that he did it. If you really want an amazing piece of footage, in fact, I'll try to look it up right now. The 1999 All-Star Game. Ted Williams coming out in Boston. Let's see if I can find it here. YouTube. 1999. Come on. 1999 All-Star Game. Ted Williams. Here we go. Check this out.
Ladies and gentlemen, he wore the Red Sox uniform for 22 years. He wore the uniform of the United States Marines for 4.5 more. He owned the left field at this very ballpark. He was the last man to hit 400 in a season, and he did it 58 years ago. He hit 521 home runs, including one on his last at bat. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the greatest hitter that ever lived, number 9, Hall of Famer, baseball legend, Ted Williams.
They did this standing ovation for over 10 minutes. It just keeps going. Yeah. This was the coolest thing. This is what made like people just start bawling in the stands while watching this. I remember it was after my 9th grade year. I just finished 9th grade. This is the summer after my 9th grade year. And this is just like one of the greatest things to watch. Anyway, I do have one other video that I want you to pay attention to, but I just want to point out, just as on a personal note, growing up watching baseball in the 1990s, it was like a golden era of baseball, just an absolute golden era of baseball. But if you grew up watching baseball between like 2000 and 2010, that sucked. That sucked. Steroid scandals. But you guys didn't watch that. When did you guys start? When did you even realize baseball was a thing? Like 2010? Something like that? I don't know. You still don't watch baseball, do you? That's fine. But it was such a golden era during the 90s. Oh my gosh. Like you had like some of the greatest players of all time. Just in that thing alone, I saw Derek Jeter, I saw Ken Griffey, I saw Cal Ripken, I saw Eddie Murray. Eddie Murray. You don't even know who Eddie Murray is. You don't know how good he was. Oh my gosh. Eddie Murray. Anyway. Eddie Murray. Yep. Won a World Series in '83, had over 500 home runs. Oh, because he just is. He's not as good as people would put. Yeah.
Introducing.
Well, actually,
the
no.
Mobile Skimmer.
Hold on one second. I just got to get past this. Click. There we go. Skip ad.
It was sponsored by Topps MLB Bunt Pin and Topps MLB.
There we go. Eddie Murray is one of those guys who very quietly got 500-something home runs. He's built in the same mold that Jim Thome was. Jim Thome was number 8 on that list for having over 600. Very quiet, very subtle kind of thing, but just consistency over the course of a lot of years. You know. Anyway, say again? Oh, yeah, Fred McGriff totally did that. I knew about Fred McGriff way more, though, because of the Braves in the 1990s, like the Braves-Yankee battles. And you know. But anyway, back to this. I want to talk about Joey Votto. Joey Votto was another one of those guys that could hit 400 in a season. He did it for half a season. I want you to pay close attention to the calculations that they do in this because it's really intense.
July 12th, 2016. It wasn't that long ago, yet it's a time that feels completely alien to us now. Major League Baseball's finest, and Addison Russell, congregated in San Diego to play the All-Star Game. The American League won 4-2, with Eric Hosmer claiming MVP, but one of baseball's brightest stars was nowhere to be found. Joey Votto wasn't bad in the first half of 2016, but he was certainly below his usual level of performance. He does, however, tend to improve as the season rolls along. While Votto didn't participate in the festivities that summer, he would have the last laugh. He was going to do something special in the coming months, something that in the past would put you on the pantheon of hitters, but now seems to be impossible. He was going to hit 400. Why are there no more 400 batting average seasons?
Now, I want you to pay close attention. He's going into his rationale, his belief as to why there are no more 400 batting seasons. But he does get a little technical. So again, try to follow along with what he's dropping on you.
Let's break it down. There are 3 ingredients to getting 4 hits every 10 at-bats. Ingredient number 1, avoiding strikeouts. As I always say, the thing about strikeouts is that they're always outs. Ingredient number 2, batting average on balls in play. It's not enough to just put the ball in play and hope for the best. The league average BABIP, which is the abbreviation I'll be using for batting average on balls in play, is around 300. So if an average hitter were to end every at-bat with a ball in play, they'd hit just 300. Thankfully, ingredient number 3 comes to the rescue. It's a special, new type of hit discovered by an alcoholic pitcher in Boston about a century ago. If you hit the ball over the fence, it's always a hit and never in play, he slurred. So let's build our ideal 400 hitter. The best at avoiding strikeouts in 2019, Hanser Alberto, who struck out in just 9.5% of at-bats. Last year's highest BABIP crown goes to Yohan Moncada, an insanely lucky 406. That's the second highest BABIP since integration in 1947. It's really not a normal league-leading batting average on balls in play, but we'll stick with it. To get a better idea of how BABIP works, I would estimate that players can maintain BABIPs as low as 250 and as high as 350 throughout their careers. Anything above or below that is what I'd call the luck zone. Obviously, the higher, the luckier you are. When it came to hitting home runs, at least on a rate basis, nobody topped Nelson Cruz, who fought off Father Time to go yard in 9% of his at-bats. If you combine those 3 ingredients, you arrive at a batting average of 421. Lovely. So, what's the catch? These three ingredients are in direct conflict with one another. Now swapping to strikeouts on a plate appearance basis, here are the top 10 hitters by K percentage in 2019. Hi, David Fletcher. Of these 10, Yuli Gurriel and Alex Bregman are the only ones with an above average home run rate. Now let's look at the players with the most home runs. Suddenly, it's strikeout rate that becomes a huge problem, as home run hitters accept more strikeouts due to their plate approach. But it's perhaps the relationship BABIP has with these two that's the most discouraging. Home runs are typically fly balls, but fly balls have the lowest batting average on any batted ball category. The low strikeout guys are contact machines, but a lot of that contact is weak contact, which prevents them from putting up elite BABIPs. And even though we were able to build a 421 hitter from Alberto, Moncada, and Cruz, Moncada is really doing some heavy lifting here. If you swap in JD Martinez and his league-leading 375 BABIP in 2018, we're suddenly stuck with a 396 hitter under the most ideal circumstances possible. The BABIP ceiling has shifted as well. If you look at baseball pre-integration, back when players actually hit 400 in a season, the highest BABIPs are way higher for a multitude of reasons. Keep all this in mind as I talk about Votto. The forces of the game don't want him to hit 400, and yet, for half a season, he did just that. While Rogers Hornsby and Ty Cobb may spring to mind as the kings of hitting 400 in a season, Joey Votto's game is much more similar to that of Ted Williams, who is still the last person to accomplish such a feat. Votto is a disciple of Teddy Ballgame. The science of hitting is his Bible. Just hear for yourself.
I carried the book with me, and I've read it several times over, and anytime I have any doubts when it comes to hitting, I go to the book, and it's served me really well. So
By the way, here's another clip from that interview.
His ages 35 to 39 were not too dissimilar from his peak OPS plus. From his career OPS plus, which is really all you should pay attention to. So for anything, I'll use Baseball Savant's expected numbers, and it says I'm doing well, which I really do feel like I'm doing well. So
I love Joey Votto so much. The sky is blue, grass is green. Joey Votto and Ted Williams walk. These are simply facts of our existence. Votto leads all active players in walk rate, Williams leads all time. Votto leads all active players in on-base percentage, Williams leads all time. And while walks don't directly impact batting average, what they can do is cut down on the sample size of batted balls over the course of a season. After all, the higher the sample size, the lower the chance of getting a lucky batting average on balls in play. But here's the catch. It takes patience to walk at a high rate, and the challenge becomes taking pitches without striking out. Every 400 hitter walked more than they struck out. Ted Williams in 1941 is perhaps the most disturbing of them all, generating 147 bases on balls while striking out just 27 times. How is that even possible? Just 2 qualified hitters avoided striking out more than they walked in 2019. Carlos Santana, who shares a name with a famous guitarist, and Alex Bregman, who is himself a noted percussionist. In the second half of his 2016 campaign, Votto walked 47 times to just 32 strikeouts. That's just one piece of the puzzle, but it definitely helped him reach the 400 mark. That ratio was aided by Votto's exaggerated choking up on the bat, which he has done for most of his career in 2-strike counts, and it gets him out of some tense situations, even if he doesn't always come away with a hit to raise his batting average. Since 2010, he has a .560 on-base percentage in plate appearances that reach full count, the best in baseball. So, Votto clearly has some skills, but what happens when he puts the ball in play? You might be surprised.
Introducing the Mobile Skimmer. So we've partnered with, as well as built out a team of engineers to custom
Joey Votto, who wasn't an all-star that year, started his 2016 second half with a 17-game hit streak, 8 of which were multi-hit games. In that stretch from July 15th to August 3rd, he hit 500. He got a hit in 50% of at-bats and reached base safely in over 60% of plate appearances. Is that good? Votto's assault on the second half of 2016 was driven by some massive games. 4 for 5 versus Milwaukee on July 16th, 4 for 4 versus St. Louis on August 2nd, 4 for 5 versus Milwaukee on August 13th, 4 for 5 at Pittsburgh on September 10th, and finally, 4 for 4 versus Pittsburgh on September 18th. See a pattern? He saved his best for divisional opponents, hitting .419 and racking up 67 hits in just 41 second-half games against his rivals. Votto's one of the best hitters of his generation, but he doesn't take a home run-centric approach. Still, he managed to hit 15 homers in that stretch, which certainly aided his average. That's 15 hits where he doesn't have to worry about BABIP luck. Speaking of BABIP luck, he had it. A 418 BABIP for the half. How much of an outlier was this? If it was over a full season, it'd be unheard of. But when you lower the possible sample size, you'll see that JD Martinez had the exact same batting average on balls in play during 2016's second half. One might fear for Votto's ability to generate a good BABIP because he's a left-handed hitter who isn't quick to first base. But rest easy that he's not a shift victim. Votto isn't particularly pull-happy. He uses all fields. Another thing that aids his quest for a higher batting average on balls in play? Line drives. From 2015 to 2017, Votto was 12th out of 232 batters in line drive rate. Line drives have by far the best chance of becoming hits. Votto also managed to solve the fly ball home run problem. Homers are free hits, but fly balls have bad batting average. The solution? Hit homers when you hit fly balls. In that 3-year stretch, over 20% of Votto's fly balls left the yard, compared to a league average of just 12.7%. The end result makes Votto a surprise BABIP king, rocking the second highest BABIP among active players with at least 3,000 plate appearances, as well as the third highest BABIP among post-integration hitters with at least 5,000 plate appearances. All of this is to say that Joey Votto's patience helps in more ways than one. When he makes contact, good things happen. So with the magic numbers of 32 strikeouts and 15 home runs and 262 at-bats, as well as a 418 BABIP, he did it. Those ingredients add up to a 400 batting average, but he actually hit 408 with the help of 5 sac flies that weren't counted as at-bats. It was only half a season, but for a significant stretch of baseball, he truly was Ted Williams. At the All-Star break, he was the 30th best hitter in the National League by WRC+. By the end, he had ascended to the number 1 spot. You can probably guess why I chose to do this topic. We're staring down the barrel of a previously unheard of 60-game regular season. What can we learn from Votto's 2016?
I'm going to skip the rest of the video, just kind of wrap up with a couple of points here. For years, from the 80s and the 90s, even though it was a golden era of baseball, in my opinion, people tend to just think like whoever hits the most home runs is the best hitter. But it's never usually that fact. The best hitters are not always the best home run hitters. The best hitters, maybe they only hit like 20 home runs in a season. I mean, we talked about Hank Aaron, for example. Hank Aaron, even though he he broke the career record for home runs, never hit more than 50 home runs in a season. I think the highest he ever hit in a season was 44 home runs. Baseball's weird. At some point, I don't know when I'm going to be able to do this. Because we only have 70-minute class periods. But I wanted to watch selected clips from Moneyball. If you guys are familiar with that movie or have you heard of it or something like that. Some of you yes, some of you no. Moneyball was the idea that Bill James is the guy that wrote the book Moneyball back in the 70s, but it wasn't until the late 90s, early 2000s that Billy Beane and Peter Brandt on the Oakland Athletics put it into practice. And the practice was just basically, okay, we can't afford these big money players, but we can afford players who can potentially get us hits in the right situation. So they use some of these in-depth statistical analyses in order to build a team that could potentially win. And they did. I mean, they didn't win the World Series, but they won a lot of games as a result of this, with a lot less money being spent. I think it was the 04 Red Sox and the 08 Phillies and potentially the early 2010 Giants all put these practices into play that led to championship teams with very low salaries, which is really cool. But they used a lot of the stuff that they're using in these videos with just beyond batting averages, but like with OPS and BABIP and stuff like that. It's amazing. We'll talk about that. Anyway, reminder that you have something due for me tomorrow. Check that thing online if you haven't already. Make sure you're updating your fantasy teams. And we'll see where it goes. And I should see a bunch of you tomorrow in the Google Meet. Bell's going to ring in like less than 30 seconds, but I'm going to sign off here. Did you guys figure out your trade?